And the Oscar goes to Parasite.
It didn't even have cheap like jump scares. And a lot of good horror movies have at least one jump scare because
When you try your best but you don't succeed.
There appears to be great main iconic films from last year, and I'm not talking about this one, or this one, or this. I'm talking about the ones from the Cannes Film Festival, Parasite and The Lighthouse. Picking the better out of the two is hard because they are both fantastic, but they are different fantastic. However, I will say that they have a similar type of quality to them when it comes to mashing different tones together, but they do it differently. Parasite is a black comedy on the poor working and living conditions of South Korea and different types of class and how they coexist. Then it matches up with being a fun family heist movie with good comedic moments. There's one genre that appears late in the film that I have a slight problem with, but I'll get to that in a minute. The Lighthouse is a pretty damn good movie, and it also likes smashing different genres together, but instead of them being collected one after the other, they're a bit more well spaced out and hidden throughout the entire film. Well, apart from the horror stuff, of course. In both movies, the comedic tone lands excellently and works best in the flow of a scene rather than having a scene begin with comedy. Both movies introduce the element midway, so nothing feels inconsistent. The horror tone in The Lighthouse is probably the most prominent genre in the film, but not really. In this movie, the comedy and genre is presented in the dialogue mostly, whilst the horror is mostly visual. Now, as a psychological horror film, there is a slight tendency to have the common trope of things only getting worse, but instead of having a cliche dumbass checkpoints with boring parts in the middle, and have 50 minutes of pure build-up that amounts to nothing, with an additional 50 minutes of disappointment, this movie does not have checkpoints. Now don't get me wrong, there's certainly a beginning, middle, and end of course, but at no point of the movie do you say, oh shit, things got worse, that scene shows that. The movie keeps you invested with its characters, story, and mystery. You never really think outside the plot because the plot is just too interesting. Parasite, on the other hand, plays a bit more freely with its genres. Since it is sort of a heist movie, the comedy feels more appropriate than ever, if used correctly. And it is. The horror tone, however, could have been a bit more rehearsed. Now don't get me wrong, this horror tone is fine, but to some people like me it does feel out of place, and the reason for that being is it's because it's the only genre introduced later in the film. When the horror genre is up and running, every other genre is taken back down a peg. But this isn't really a problem because the horror genre doesn't feel out of place. It just feels a little late to the party, you know? I was having fun watching a comedy heist movie. Then this horror element shows up and starts a new chapter. Like I said, I wouldn't call it unwelcome or out of place. This is just a little jarring for me, and I probably won't be jarring on my second watch. Cinematography wise, both films have incredible potential. Now when I discuss cinematography, I don't use it as a determining factor most of the time. If a movie has good cinematography, then good job, well done, you made the presentation more engaging. And if a film has bad cinematography, then oh boy. But if it's right down the middle, it doesn't really bother me as a critic. To use both movies as an example of this, I would say that The Lighthouse is the better movie when it comes to cinematography and anything camera-wise, because it went the extra mile. But since Parasite isn't necessarily trying to have the same level of art as The Lighthouse, I do not put it down as a win of which film is better, but which has better presentation. Like if you don't care about anything else and you just want good presentation, The Lighthouse is your answer. The Lighthouse is shot in black and white with a different aspect ratio because it wants to be cute and creative. There are also a lot of long takes to show off good ass acting that is some of the best acting and dialogue I've seen all year. Plus I'm gonna say this, people don't give Robert Pattinson enough credit. Willem Dafoe might be doing a better job, but I've always found it cute when a young actor is close to the same level as someone more experienced. The long takes capture the essence of the scene, dialogue and acting perfectly, whilst in movies like Midsommar, also made by A24, they clearly used a long take for the fun of it. Some of the dialogue in that movie cannot hold up to the long take, and this is a problem, and The Lighthouse does not have this problem, in the slightest. Parasite has good dialogue and acting, and some good shots as well. The main problem is that the good acting isn't usually recognized due to the fact that many people don't speak the language and are reading the subtitles, and after the film, your brain doesn't remember the Korean words that came out of their mouths, so it automatically dubs the English subs, and it is hard to recognize excellent acting because you are not judging it based off the film anymore. You are judging it based on how good your brain is at replacing Korean sounds with English words that were provided. Now I did struggle at first, but from what I saw, I thought the acting was pretty good, and I need to see it again to just finalize my opinion on it. And I will see it again, obviously. It's fantastic. Last thing I'm going to talk about are the characters and the script. In the Lighthouse, there are two characters located in one location, and they have to get used to one another, whilst the tension builds up. Both characters have depth in every scene, and when they don't, it's usually to play them off as mysterious. But I feel like every scene tells us something new and fun. The script is really good, and not just based on dialogue. A lot of the visual representation is truly remarkable, and it is really what really immersed me in the film in the first place. Parasite's characters are a bit more tropey, but mostly for comedic effect, and only their outline is tropey. Everything inside feels real. For the Lighthouse, you could tell that they actually read journals from wikis, and they actually looked up all this Edgar Allan Poe stuff and all this Greek shenanigans that everybody keeps talking about. The script for Parasite is really good for what the film is going for, and the dialogue doesn't necessarily need to be taken seriously due to it being a comedy. The directing in both films is pretty great, and I will certainly rewatch them and talk more about them in my best of 2019 list, which I'll get to in a sec. I'll explain how that works. So if you want to follow me, you can subscribe to my channel, get a notification bell, and maybe even comment something about how I'm wrong. Good day, and I'll talk to you all later. Hey guys, just wanted to explain all that stuff I was talking about earlier about ranking the decades. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through every single decade and basically just review a lot of great films and one particularly bad film from each decade. I will do a few more bad films though, because, you know, we all like those. Anyway, my best of 2010 video came out like a few days ago, so if you want to check that out you can, and if you want to keep up, make sure to subscribe to the channel and all that. Anything else you guys, you could just ask me. I will probably review it, maybe not, but we will see, and I'll talk to you all later.